World political systems. The question of how a government should operate has been debated since the era of ancient Greece. There are a number of issues that a government must address when running a state. In addition to pursuing the public good, a government must also justify why it should exist, what should and should not be in its legal scope, and what kind of goals it should strive toward. These issues are at the core of political philosophy and theory. The core debate in political philosophy is deciding how a government should operate. It thus comes as no surprise that there are a number of systems that have been used to run a country. A dictatorship is perhaps the simplest government structure, with a sole ruler with absolute power at the head of the government. Every law, policy, and government decision is under the purview of the dictator, and no limitations exist to restrict this power. If a group rather than a single individual comes to power and holds absolute power, then it is referred to as an oligarchy. A monarchy, a common type of government during the medieval era, was effectively a dictatorship. The monarch was the sole source of authority. However, the king would delegate authority to those below him to ensure an efficient structure. These delegations of authority were important later on, as they provided the framework for bureaucratic systems. Any type of government that places the power in a select individual or few individuals is called authoritarian. Democracy is another type of government, but it places the power with the people. Some governments, like the city-states of ancient Greece, were direct democracies in which people would vote directly on every issue that the state faced, and the choice of the majority would then be the final decision. The Romans were influenced by the ideas of the Greeks, but found the constant demands of the state too much for the people because they were always voting. Republican government was derived from democracy, but had the people elect officials into offices responsible for the decision-making process. This allowed the public to delegate power to a select few individuals who they felt were worthy of handling bureaucratic processes. If officials failed to meet the expectations of the public, they could be elected out of office and replaced. The key point to democratic forms of government is that the power rests with the people. In spite of the fact that democratic and authoritarian powers centralize the source of power in different places, the two have been incorporated in the past. For quite some time, Great Britain has maintained a democratic monarchy. In this system, democratically elected members in Parliament work with the monarch to run the country. Regardless of its structure, a government must be prepared to deal with the demands of the people as they see fit. Without the support of at least a portion of the populace, a government will have a hard time maintaining control in a nation. What is expected of the government, however, can vary dramatically from culture to culture. After the Enlightenment in Western Europe, for instance, most people felt that the duty of the government was to ensure that a marketplace could exist so that capitalism could thrive. However, as more nations experienced the Industrial Revolution and the economic problems that came with it, people began calling for more government oversight in the economy to remedy the discrepancies in the capitalist system. Many nations responded accordingly, limiting the way businesses worked by mandating certain work conditions. As conditions arise, governments must respond accordingly to maintain peace. However, there are significantly different approaches in the way governments may handle problems. The United States has a long history of free market capitalism with very few restrictions. The government decided it best to let the problems work themselves out, for better or worse. In this case, the goal of the government was to maintain a principle of capitalism in the society. Alternatively, other countries have taken measures to limit the injustices created by capitalism. Their effort is marked with a desire to strive towards economic equality. Thus, the motives, goals, and principles of governments may vary dramatically, but political theory is interested in exploring all possible and actual approaches that a government may take in order to create a functioning state.